Hi everyone, and welcome to the Space and Defense Market Update. I'm Mo Islam, CEO of Arkaea Media Group. We're a multi-brand news media company focused on critical technologies that are linked to national security. We have two flagship brands, Payload, which covers the space industry, and Tectonic, which covers defense innovation. We're super excited to be here today. We've joined forces with NYSC to provide you a monthly update on everything you need to know as an investor in the space and defense world. I'm joined here by Jack Kerr, Research Director at Payload. Jack, thanks so much for being with us today. I do want to start off the show talking about space. We've seen an enormously successful year for the industry. I mean, just evidenced by the public markets, like space companies, there's about 22 public space companies that are up about 175% over the last year. That's outperformed the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, Mag 7, Bitcoin, you name it. What's happening? And I mean, tell us what you think is what stands out to you the most.
Yeah, so 2025 was really a convergence of a number of different tailwinds that shored up the space story. The biggest here was the introduction of the Golden Dome missile defense architecture, which is poised to run through space. And this can be a multi-decade long initiative requiring hundreds of billions of dollars from the Pentagon, which is a very positive sign for the space industry. The broader theme here is that there's a growing realization that space-based capabilities, that being launch, that being satellite communications, that being imaging, that being sensing, is increasingly critical to modern defense.
Right, and that's just the U.S., right? Yeah. You're seeing a similar pattern play out in Europe on sovereignty. It's front and center right now, given the geopolitical issues. Like, what are we seeing in Europe?
Yeah, ton of investment from European countries and investors into European space businesses. We saw at the beginning of the year with the introduction of Golden Dome, but we saw a bunch of skirmishes, a lot of geopolitical tension. There was the Zelensky-Trump dust-up. There was Trump putting pressure on European leaders to increase their defense spending, and European countries have come to realize that they can't and shouldn't just rely on the U.S. for access to space. So that means more dollars into space businesses, euros actually, into space businesses. That means more activity in space. That means funding for innovation, which is critical for that region. And I want to go back to the U.S. government, because I think it's an important topic to talk about Jared Isaacman, who is the new NASA administrator. And he comes from the commercial sector, and he's going to come in and really push a further commercialization of space. And that means, a positive demand and tailwinds for more innovation-focused, smaller businesses that we cover.
Yeah, and it's a great point. And I think Jared's appointment also has signaled sort of this end of the slow traditional procurement era in NASA and a shift towards more commercially friendly NASA. And look, we might be looking at the most commercially minded NASA administrator we've ever had. I hope I don't
offend someone.
offend someone by that comment, but I think it's created significant optimism around space and space newcomers, and especially those that are pushing innovation. I mean, Jared's been to space twice through SpaceX, and we'll talk about SpaceX, but I do want to talk a bit about SpaceX's competition. Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos, they had a massive win in 25. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so SpaceX is the most dominant player here. They have the most launches, the most satellites in space, but there was a number of companies, other companies, maybe smaller companies, new entrants that made a big splash this year. Namely, you just mentioned Blue Origin, who launched their New Glenn rocket, this really big rocket, and were able to land the booster, which was a key milestone. They did that this year. There are other companies that are actually publicly traded, some on the New York Stock Exchange, like Planet Labs and Rocket Lab and AST Space Mobile, that were able to get a nice footing this year as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think 2025 was also the year where launch became really boring, right? Like SpaceX launched 165 times. That's about 3 times a week. No one talks about that anymore, right? You have your space nerds that do, but other than that, launch has become boring. So what does that tell you about how the industry is evolving right now?
Yeah. It's boring from an investor perspective, but still fun for a space nerd like us perspective. Yeah. But from that business point of view, launch is infrastructure, and the really exciting thing here is the downstream applications, namely, and the biggest one, namely Starlink,
Yep.
which is SpaceX's satellite constellation that is beaming down internet from space. So that network has grown tremendously over the last couple of years. Last year, it doubled its customer base to now around 9 million users, and continues to outperform everybody's expectation about how big this market is, particularly on the consumer side.
Right.
Used to just be a satellite communication, used to be more of a government and enterprise business, but now it's folks like me and you who just need internet and are connecting with Starlink.
Right. And we have to talk about the IPO. So SpaceX is going to go public potentially, maybe. We don't know for sure, but it's looking likely. We've seen numbers quoted, $1.5 trillion valuation. We'll find out who the book runners on that deal are going to be. It's either going to be, it sounds like the rumors are Morgan Stanley and Goldman. But what are your general thoughts about the SpaceX IPO?
Yeah, that's a big number, 1.5 trillion. This is going to be the biggest IPO ever. I mean, there's both in terms of raise and also in terms of just eyeballs on this thing.
Yeah.
This is like you're combining the fascination of space with an Elon Musk company that is doing very well. So we're already seeing that play out in the market now, where companies are being re-rated, publicly traded companies are being re-rated based on that $1.5 trillion valuation. Hey, if SpaceX is worth that, what is Rocket Lab, the second most prolific launcher, what should they be worth? Right. Is it 10% of SpaceX? Is it 1% of SpaceX? So the market's really trying to figure that out now. And also the interesting thing about this IPO is it took us by surprise, and it kind of came out of left field.
Right.
And the reason for this is the impetus is not to fund Starlink.
Right.
It's for a new concept, data centers in space. It's all about data centers. Right. Everything is data centers. So SpaceX is clearly very excited about this. They want to raise maybe around $30 billion to fund that, maybe fund some other things. But that is something to keep an eye out for as kind of the years go on.
Yeah, and we can talk about data centers for a long time.
Yeah.
A lot of debate out there right now around whether it's viable, but I want to touch on the SpaceX going public piece, particularly from like the liquidity that it's going to create for existing investors. SpaceX has been a private company for 23 years, and there's a lot of investors in there that are going to get substantial amount of liquidity, and that could be recycled back into the industry. And also SpaceX, when it goes public, it'll eventually become the index sort of like beta trade of space, in which case if you're a manager looking for alpha, or quite frankly if you're an investor who's just looking for juicier returns, you're going to chase other companies in the space segment, and there's generally going to be a natural lift. I mean, we've seen this before with other companies that have become institutionalized through like becoming a part of the S&P 500, and in general just having more eyeballs. So like that'll be kind of an interesting dynamic to see.
Yeah.
We've talked about government. We've talked about commercial. Tell us a little bit about the civilian. We have a big civilian side. We have a big mission coming up this year.
Exactly. So NASA, for the first time in 50 years since the Apollo era, is launching astronauts around the moon and back to Earth, not landing on the moon. And this is the Artemis 2 mission, and that's going to drive a lot of mainstream interest in this. We talked about SpaceX bringing investors on board, but this is just going to drive general excitement about space. Hey, we're doing really cool things in space. There's cool technology that's getting us there, and it's going to be a big milestone for NASA in America.
Definitely. Not to mention Starship. We got the launchers, NASA deciding on the successor of the ISS, a lot going on. Jack, thanks so much for being with us. To everyone watching, thank you for watching. We'll be back here on the exchange floor next month, providing you the next bout of updates and what's going on in space and defense. In the meantime, follow Payload and Tectonic for all your news, and we'll be back. So thanks so much for having us, and until next time.